how it tells you, yo, this shit's being recorded.
Well, it's more than a lot of people do these days.
Yeah, exactly.
So we are back. We're here with Keith Smith. We're talking about his band Anarchy Club, and there was something you said previously that Adam understood the vision, and I absolutely knew what you meant when you said that because I'm sure for anybody that's listened to Anarchy Club, there is just such a very specific idea to it. Like it's such a very specific thing, not even just with the sound, but the lyrics and the textures and the feel. And yeah, when I first heard, I had heard Get Clean, some of the others, and
Yeah.
here and there, but then when I first heard The Way in Its Power, all the way through, which is the
Yeah.
first album, it's like, I get this, and they get me. Like I 100% know what this is about and where it's coming from. Like you've got fast cars and swords and explosions and like
Yeah.
tough action women. It's like this is all of me right here. And I think that's the kind of thing you can only get from like having a really small indie band, or well, an indie band with just two people. And would you say that? So adding on, I think again in the way that only a small band can have, you have a very dedicated fan base for Anarchy Club.
Oh yeah.
Um,
It's culty in some ways. It's
and
kind of strange.
yeah, absolutely. And I say that as being 100% in the cult. Uh,
Thank you.
this interview is one of the main reasons I even have a YouTube channel.
You want to know something funny?
Mm.
This is my first video interview for Anarchy Club or anything ever. When I was
Really?
younger and I was in this other band years ago, we did them. But I have since the birth of Anarchy Club, I have never done a video interview. So
Wow. It honors me to be the first. Uh, so would you say that the that singularity of vision has played a part in that cult-like fan base?
I think so. I think I think our stuff resonates with a lot of people, and especially different people from different outsiders from different outside cliques kind
Mm.
of gravitate to us. And there's a I, I don't even know if it's my right to say this because I only know it all from creating it. I can never experience it from the outside. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? But I kind of feel like it. There's a comfort to it, and it's a something to connect to for people. You know, and I think we can talk more about this later because I don't want to change the subject. But I think also for people who've been fans for a long time, that a lot of what we've been seeing in the world for the last 5 or 6 years
Mm.
we're singing about and warning about from the first album. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So and I think there's a lot of that. There's a lot of female empowerment in the songs. There's a lot of niche stuff that only anime nerds and kung fu movie heads
Mhm.
and people who are into random shit would understand. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. So you've got something like a song like Boss Fight,
Right.
which I think is, I mean, it's so short, but it's just perfect in a way. Like it's got everything that it needs to. And anybody who's spent any time playing games, which if they're watching this channel, they probably have,
Yeah.
they get it. And yeah, just to reaffirm what you were saying, I that sense of connection, like it
Yeah.
just the music made sense because like um Guilty, Come Drink With Me on The Way in Its Power.
Yeah.
It's like, oh shit, this is the kind of stories I've been telling or wanting to see or enjoying. This is what I want right here. And there's somebody out there who's making that.
Right. Right. Right.
And so being able to find somebody, other people that are creating art that is so in tune.
Here's a fun thing for you. We can go into this later, but
Mm.
you know the song Assassins?
Mhm.
Um, that's part of an ongoing saga that we never got to finish. But Single Drop of Red
Hmm.
is that story from the other perspective.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. Because I had always wondered, because "Single Drop of Red" is also a lyric in
Right.
Assassins. So okay, that makes sense. Is it also about Agent 47 fighting one of the assassins from Assassin's Creed?
No,
Ah,
no.
okay.
It's all very much. I mean, it's broader than this, but the inspiration comes from a very young age. I had how do I nail this in ADHD terms and keep it as short as possible? When I was very little, I had a young mother, right?
Mhm.
So, and we didn't have a lot of money, and I had a great aunt who was a concession stand runner at a series of at a chain of grindhouse movie theaters in Boston,
Sick.
right? So we didn't have a lot of money, so every weekend we would just spend going to the movies. And because of that, I got to see. I was like weaned, and my mother was young too, so she was taking me to movies she wanted to see. You know what I mean?
Right.
Obviously, she's not taking me to see The Exorcist or Caligula, but like, but I got to see all these crazy like exploitation, muscle car exploitation, black
Mm,
exploitation, the early beginnings of the kung fu exploitation thing, and all of that were all ingredients in the recipe of my creativity when I was younger, and that grew into a love for like the Chinese wuxia cinema and stuff, like all the
mm,
like flying heroes and how those stories predate westerns, but also like it's cyclical. You know what I mean?
mhm.
Like those influenced Japanese samurai stories, and then westerns came along and were influenced by the Japanese samurai movies, and then those movies were influenced by the westerns, and then the westerns influenced the Chinese movies, and it just goes like in a cycle.
Yeah.
But I was strongly into the like the misunderstood killer and and the outsider hero who's lost all focus except like their target and their mission and what they need to do, and they can't die until they've done that. So you see a lot of that, I think, in Anarchy Club songs. There's a lot of just like i'm I'm fighting an evil that against insurmountable odds, and I give zero shits about it, and I'm gonna do it, like, you know what I mean? And there's we probably have at least like 8 songs with that kind of premise in it, you know.
And it works so well.
So thank
And
you, thank you.
most of them end tragically.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
guess
yeah,
maybe not most, but a lot.
yeah.
Um,
Well, in the case of Assassins and Single Drop of Red, one ends tragically and the other one ends like, and the bad guy is vanquished. You know what I mean? So
hmm. And then, so yeah, that makes sense. And then I think a part of also also the appeal of Anarchy Club, and it appeals to the group that it does because like the songs are all very narrative driven.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's not just like verse chorus.
And Adam used to ride my ass about that too. He would always say like, he's like, enough political stuff. Like you have to like tell stories. That's what everybody loves. They love the stories. So
Hmm. And I think it really pays off again because like you've got such bangers like Blood on the Snow. I mean,
oh yeah.
or like of
Well,
all.
I could tell you something about Blood on the Snow now
Mhm.
that people don't know because it never came to fruition. I wrote a novel and it
Oh.
was supposed to be made into a comic, and the art for about the first 4 issues was finished, and then it all fell apart. And that
Mhm.
took about 8 years and went through like 3 different artists to get there.
Mhm.
And one of them, I won't say any names, but she's one of my favorite artists of all time. And we knew each other at Harmonix, and she was into it, but she was going through stuff in her world, and
Hmm.
it was just colliding with the vision of the thing. But Blood in the Snow is actually the name of the main character of the story. and that story is about like her coming to be who she was. That song. So
And that's, yeah, I think so. It is a really, it's a very compelling song, and that character, even though you really only get to like experience them for the what 3.5 minutes that the
right,
song
right, right,
runs,
right.
like I'm really into this character. I want more. Are there any plans to release that novel in any way? Because
Yeah, I still go back to it every now and then. I've had a few people who've read it,
hmm,
and they were all highly complimentary, and some of them are actually in the industry, and they were blown away by it, and they were just kind of like, I wish we had more pull, or that you were a little bit more well known, because this deserves to be told. You know,
yeah,
the whole story in and of itself is pretty great. I don't want to say any more because that stuff goes,
right.
but that and again, it ties into all the stuff I was saying before, like the stuff that was important to me as a kid growing up and
Mhm.
stayed there. When you talk about the other stories, though, the song "Nameless,"
Mhm.
right, off of "Life in the Underground," is about Jet Li's character in Hero.
Okay.
And if you go
Uh,
back and like listen to that now, thinking that way, you'll totally hear it. But there's a lot of things that are inspired. A lot of stuff that comes. It's an amalgamation of things. A lot of it that is stream of consciousness.
mm.
And then there's a few songs out there that are like directly like, I love this film, or I love this actor, or I love this scene in a movie, and I really wanna, you know.
Yeah, like well, Man Behind the Mask, I believe you had said at one point was Batman,
Right, right, right.
which once you know that it's supposed to be Batman, it's like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
that all adds up. So
Yeah, the verses are Batman and the choruses are Bruce Wayne. So
oh yeah, okay, that that also tracks. So that leads us. We're gonna keep talking about Anarchy Club for a bit longer, but we will have to eventually come back to comics, specifically Batman, specifically Grendel, also
oh yes.
also Batman Grendel, and
Yeah.
Batman Grendel 2. But sticking with Anarchy Club for a bit more, it's a very unique band, again, in the way only that something small can be. How would you describe the Anarchy Club sound to somebody that is maybe new or doesn't know?
um, two kids who grew up malcontents and wanted to make an industrial post-punk heavy band, and ended up making metal,
Yeah, that tracks.
because we were thinking Ministry, and
Mm,
we ended up more like White Zombie. Yeah. you know.
yeah.
Although I can say with easy, I can say easily that we don't really sound like them. There's one song we have that is a clear homage to them, but I don't know if people noticed it, so I won't say anything. But
Um, so, hmm, what else was I gonna say here? Sorry, long day, blanking out.
it's okay, dude. It's funny because I had to jump on my phone and pull up our discography, because I haven't. Look, I've been doing other bands and stuff, so I kind of
Right.
try to put stuff on the shelf and not think about it, and then come back to it. You know. So
Mhm.
now I'm like trying to look at stuff and be like, oh yeah, this song, we could talk about that or whatever. So
Do you have do you have a favorite Anarchy Club song that you put together?
that's a tough one, man.
Yeah.
Um,
Nobody wants to make that Sophie's choice, but
right, right, right. I can't say I have one absolute favorite, but I have a rotating list of
hmm.
favorites.
What would you put on an Anarchy Club greatest hits?
Um, Here, I was gonna say, you can laugh. I've got the whole discography right here, so I'm just gonna like go through it, because I mean we wrote a lot of songs, so it's kind of
Yeah, I,
um,
it's a pretty good output for.
yeah. I had someone criticize me once, saying, "You guys wrote over 60 songs, and only 10 of them are amazing." And I was just like, "Dude, 10 amazing songs in your career is a pretty good thing. And
Right.
that means we did 50 okay songs in your opinion. So whatever. But also there's a lot of people on Spotify and in the gaming world who would beg to differ with your opinion. So
Yeah. And I mean, 10 amazing songs across 4 albums and 2 EPs.
right.
That's pretty good ratio,
Yeah,
I'd say.
exactly. Exactly. Let's see. I would say I'll go through each album and tell you my favorites individually. Um
Do it.
Enemy Ace because it was the first Anarchy Club song. Um
And a great way to start an album.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That I wrote that song when I lived in San Francisco,
Yeah.
and then it eventually like morphed and became Enemy Ace. Um, King of Everything because it's about Monkey King. People don't realize
Uh,
that, but if you go back and look at it, it's
yeah.
about Monkey King. Um,
Okay, yeah, that all I never thought to put it in like a specific context.
yeah, yeah. It literally I pull stuff direct. Like I said, every Anarchy Club song has inside stuff, and I have all the keys in here, but I just have to like looking through this now. I'm like, oh. You know what I mean?
Yeah, one of those cartoonishly big key rings, and it's like this
Yeah,
one,
exactly.
oh, this
Oh,
one.
this is that one. This one made me laugh about this. Um, but yeah, I would say probably yeah, Enemy Ace would be one my top choice from that. Um, Obviously, Behind the Mask needs to be on there because it was the song that broke us.
Right.
Um, Kill for You and Boss Fight, I would say, off of the first record. See, single. Oh, here we go. And I'll just tell the truth now. From the EP, A Single Drop of Red, Graveyard Stick Shift is an homage to
I
Rob Zombie
knew
and
it.
White Zombie, and that people don't realize that, but it's a story in my head about every on a certain night
Hmm.
in every cycle, Jesus and Satan meet and have a drag race.
That's about the most Rob Zombie thing you can get
Yeah, exactly.
without putting his wife in there. I can't remember her name off
Yeah,
the
yeah,
top
yeah.
of my
And going yeah,
You got to get the Urios in there.
yeah, exactly. Um, let's see, but off of and then Art of War, that's my favorite album. I think Adam is partial to the way in its power,
Hmm.
but for me, I think the Art of War is my favorite of all of them.
Yeah, I think that's the one I go back to the most, so I think that's probably my choice as well.
And I would say on that record, I mean everything on that is great, but I think Get Clean's obvious.
Hmm.
Riddle Me This and I guess I don't know, maybe Built to Grind. But again, this is you're asking me to pull favorites off of like an ever switching list, so this is me
Right.
just going through them and being like, oh man. Um, and then one that I could have told you right from the beginning is one of my favorites of all time is from Life in the Underground, and that's Hidden Secret Song.
Yeah,
And,
absolutely.
and I wrote that in homage to Kurt Cobain.
Okay.
I mean,
That fits.
and that's no secret. Everybody knows, like, he gave me my first guitar lesson
Mm.
and
Right.
all that.
I was just gonna lead into that. So
Yeah,
yeah,
let's go
you got
there.
your first guitar lesson from Kurt Cobain.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Um. Okay. I basically fell in love with that band shortly after Bleach came out,
Okay.
and I was obsessed with them, like obsessed with them, and kept missing them when they came to town and everything, and had friends who hung out with them, and so I got to get a demos. I got my
Mhm.
hands on some demos for Nevermind before it was released.
Oh,
And
sick.
that stuff's pretty great. And some of that was actually put on that 25th anniversary release that they made.
Mhm.
Some of those tracks are on that. But then I went to go see them. It was I want to say that Nevermind had been out for 3 days roughly, and they were playing this WFNX Music Fest in town on Lansdowne Street, which is like the club street. And I went to go. Me and my friend spent the whole day running around town trying to just find them walking around because we knew they'd just be walking around, and couldn't find them. Went to the show. My mind was blown. It's considered one of their best performances ever, and you can actually find the audio for it online if you look it up for their Boston show. I think it's at Axis. It's called. Was the club at the time? It used to be called Spit, but I think it was Axis when they played. And the show was phenomenal. And I went outside, and I was just blown away by it. And I'm looking around, and all these people are running around everywhere trying to find the band, right? And I look down next to me, right by the front fucking door, and Kurt Cobain is sitting on the ground rolling a cigarette, right? And I look down, and he says, "Hey man, do you have a light?" So I sit down next to him, and I light a cigarette, and I light mine because I smoked back then. And we're just sitting there chilling. I'm like, "Great show," and he's like, "Yeah, thanks, whatever." And we just sit there quietly for a while. And I said, and this has come back to like haunt me in a good and sad way ever since. I turned to him and I said, "You know what's really weird is everybody here is looking for you, and you're right here." And he was like, "Yeah, that's kind of funny," right? So we hung out. I met the rest of the band. He invited me to a party. So we went to a party at the Hilton in town. There was a bunch of record execs there, so we couldn't really wreck the place. But we went into the bathroom and raised hell while everybody else was schmoozing. And then they had added another show for the next day. Went to that afternoon show, hung out with them again, and they invited me to go on the road with them to Rhode Island for the show that was going to be the next night.
Oh, sick.
So and in that show, the Melvins were opening for them, right? So we went to the show and hung out, and I was working at a comic book warehouse at the time. And so I showed up with a courier bag filled with comics for them. Because I was like, "You guys are just launching on this tour. Here's a bunch of comic books for the road."
Right.
And they were really grateful. We ended up hanging out. They put all the comics in the van because the club said they had a ton of beer. And the club said, "You can't take it with you, but you can drink whatever you have here." So they put all the comics in the van, and we filled up the bag probably like 4 times, just walking in like right with
Well,
beers,
yeah.
right? Obviously, right? And we bring all that back to the hotel, and they had like 3 or 4 rooms, I think, on this one floor. And we showed up, and it was just this awesome, really down to earth, fun party where that spilled out into the hallway, the elevators. And I came out, and I was sitting there, and he was just strumming on a guitar. And I was like, "Man, I wish I could play like you. I know very little about guitar, and it's something I've always wanted, but it's always seemed really difficult." He was like, "Guitar is really easy." And then he basically just did a bar chord and showed me the barcode, and I did it, and he showed me that. And then he said, "Now move that up and down." So I did that, and he goes, "Okay, you're doing good. Now move this one finger up and down." And then he was like, "See, that's a totally different note." So he was doing that, and he's like, "Now with that little piece I gave you, you can play pretty much half of all the hard rock songs that have ever been written." And I was like, "Wow, thanks, man." And he showed me, he did some AC/DC and some other stuff. It was kind of funny. But I went home and was just like, "That's magical." And what's weird is at that time, and people don't remember this now because Nirvana's Nirvana, but they still didn't blow up huge.
Right.
The album had been out for like 3 days. They went to Europe with Sonic Youth and came back. And it was when, like months later, when they were coming back, that Smells Like Teen Spirit exploded. And so, and then we talked on the phone a bunch every now and then. It was funny because he called the house a couple times, and my mother was always like, "Your friend Kirk is on the phone." And I was like, "It's Kurt, Mom." But I'm so embarrassed, you know.
Oh, girl, right.
but And then the last time we hung out was for the In Utero tour.
Uh,
And I was supposed to go to the Unplugged thing.
mhm.
Long story short, I told my girlfriend I knew the band. She thought I was just lying to sound cool, right?
Right.
So I told her, if you drive me to the place the date of the show, I'll get us in with VIP passes. And she was like, sure, sure. And I was like, well, we got to go in the afternoon. It's like an all day thing.
Right.
So she drives me there. I disappear for like 4 hours on an adventure that, in and of itself, is a whole other interview, right? Um, I come back a few hours later with backstage passes. She feels like an idiot because she bought tickets because she thought I was lying and she wanted to go to the show, right? I still have one of the tickets unripped downstairs on my desk. So, but
Nice.
but I stood outside trying to give them away, like standing on the side of the road, being like free Nirvana tickets, and no one stopped. But yeah, that was the last time we hung out, and we were. He invited us to go. Him and Dave invited us to go to New York for the Unplugged, and she was like, "I got to work tomorrow, and you if you got to find your own way there and back." And she was kind of
Mhm.
being a jerk about it. So I was like, "Oh man, I'll talk to you guys next time you're in town." And that was, we all know
Yeah.
how the rest of that story played out. So
Yeah. Man, so you were like you didn't just hang out with Kurt Cobain this one time, like you were in the same room.
right, right. We hung out for like almost a week. It was like 4 days, 5 days,
Yeah, you were
and
like actually friends with the guy.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's
And
nuts.
and it's funny because I have friends that were a lot closer to him than I was.
Mhm.
Like my friend JJ Gonson, he used to like stay at her house and stuff when they'd come to town. She's an amazing photographer. She's got all these photos of him, and she's gotten to the point now where her photography is getting really well known, so she's being able to sell those photos now.
Mhm.
But yeah, he would call my house. They mailed the courier bag back to me after the tour, and
Well, that's
the
nice.
that night in Rhode Island, they gave me, and I still have it downstairs. And it's so rare that you can't. A lot of record collectors don't even know it's a thing. But when the album had first come out, they made the label made 12-inch clear gold singles
Ooh.
for Nevermind that was strictly promotional, and each member of the band got one. And Chris Novoselic gave me his,
Wow.
and I still have that downstairs. And I looked online one time, and it's worth like $1,000, like I'd ever sell it. But like,
Right, yeah. Wow,
that's
man,
something for
that's
my
nuts.
daughter to show off later
They
on.
yeah, exactly, yeah. And then all of her friends won't believe her.
Right, right, right.
Oh, that
But
is
yeah,
nuts.
so they were a big impact on my life. The tragedy being
So
that my takeaway should have been study guitar aggressively, and instead it was, oh, this is easy. So I would just pick it up and write songs and then put it down, and then pick it up and write songs and put it down. And then over the last like 10 years or so, I've just been like, oh, I get it, and I love this. And I'm sorry it took me so long, but I've just been writing a lot of music since then. So
right. Well, I
not
don't
with
know,
Anarchy Club, but you know,
it's, that's still kind of at least, as I see it, it's still kind of in line with the, punk rock ethos.
oh yeah,
Like, I only need this much. We can
yeah,
do, like, a whole thing,
right. And
which I
I had musician friends who would give me shit for that, but at the same breath they'd say they can't write a song to save their lives. They could be like, I play way better than you'll ever play. Like, you suck as a guitar player, but you can shit out good songs. So they were like, I can play solos for days, but I can't write a hooky melody. And
yeah,
I was like,
I
go back and listen to 70s pop and old punk rock, dude. And it if you can't hear it in that, then you can't hear it. Like, you know what I mean?
it's only as complicated as you make it.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
I mean, coming back to, um, like, game design and stuff earlier, like, all
Yeah.
these companies are trying to make it so hard, it's not that hard to find something that's fun. Just keep
Yeah,
it simple.
exactly, exactly. You know, is a good example for that too.
Hmm.
I never had a Switch. I was never big like hot conversation. Like, this is the point where everybody points guns at me like John Wick. But I was never a big Nintendo dude. I always liked Nintendo, but I liked Sega stuff more. I thought it was kind of
Oh,
coming from a different place, right? And
controversy.
right, and every I've owned almost all the Nintendo systems, but every single one was given to me secondhand. I never bought one, right? And the Switch came out, and I didn't really get one because I didn't really see anything on there that I wanted to play that was like specific to it. I got a PS5, cracked out on that, got my daughter a Switch, and then was like, oh, we can play together, so I should get one so that I
Mm,
can play games with her on hers. Like she can be upstairs and I'm in the living room or whatever, right?
right.
And then I fell in love with it, right?
That's
And I just
yeah.
love all those games. And when you talk about just doing something right, I cannot stop cracking out on Splatoon 3.
I've heard good things. I
But
don't have a Switch myself, but
it's 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 a shooter
uh-huh.
and a strategy game done in such a way, and I kind of hate PvP, except in Destiny I'm cool with it, but like Call of Duty and stuff soured me on PvP early on. I just hate that. It's a toxic
Yeah.
community,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And what I found in Splatoon is just by the aesthetic of the game and the way the characters talk and things and look and the music and everything, even if you're getting your ass handed to you, it's still fun. You know what I mean? And
Yeah,
you can go
absolutely.
back and you start learning, and then you start learning that this really simple game is actually like four-tier chess once you start digging into it, you
Hmm.
know?
Yeah,
But the
it's as
premise is simple and easy to get into. And I look at that, and then I look back at other Nintendo games I've bought since then, and that holds true across for like a lot of them, you
yeah,
know?
I think that's I mean, one, that's why they've lasted so long,
Right, right, right,
even with their pretty catastrophic moments.
right. And there
But
need
yeah,
to make wacky controllers for the sake of being different, but
yeah, but they just have that singular like Nintendo knows what they're doing, and that's why Sony and Microsoft are not competition for Nintendo.
right,
They're not doing the same thing at all.
right.
Um,
And they might make more sporadically, but
mm,
Nintendo doesn't have to sweat it. They're always doing good, and they have a guaranteed niche market. Oh, you went deaf. I can't hear you.
testing, testing.
Yep, now I can hear you.
Cool. Nintendo fans will always buy Nintendo. There will
Yes,
always be
exactly,
Nintendo fans.
exactly. And it's funny because Microsoft super fans are only as loyal as the next PlayStation. You know, I stand strong in it, but I was going to say the 360 was the one window where Microsoft jumped out and shined, and I think that and Ken Kunragi was such a dick during that in the Sony phase that it turned people off. You know, I don't know how much you know about that, but he was saying stuff like PlayStation should be expensive. Someone should have to save for a month to buy one because this is a luxury item. And he was saying stuff like that at the launch of PS3, you know, and people were like, "Are you kidding me, dude?" And then they delivered, and it didn't really PS3 didn't hit its stride till the end of its cycle, really. Up, you're deaf again. I can't hear you. It's weird. What's going on?
Who?
Yep, yep, yep. I was gonna say almost just like hold it, so you don't have to
Yeah,
sweat it.
I think that other one's battery died, and the one I was charging, it doesn't come on. I've got multiple mics.
Okay, good, good, good.
Um, yeah, 360 just really cleaned up through that whole era, especially during the early part. Then
Oh yeah,
late,
dude, that
late.
Tenchu Online game, which was the end of their cycle,
Hmm.
that's one of my favorite games of all time. And it's funny because it only essentially had like 10 maps, but you could just run it over and over again. And like some of my, everybody loves games and everybody has their favorite games, but also everybody has like those 5 moments in gaming, 5 to 10 moments that you
Mm,
will just remember for your entire life because they were just so like chef's kiss awesome.
mm.
And I have a few of those came from the 360. So
Oh. Coming back, so I guess we've got a little bit of time before our next break. How quickly can we define what is punk? We talked about the punk ethos.
they see that's how can you define it? I think defining it even is not punk. You know
I
what I
think
mean?
that's fair.
I think that it's kind of if I'll say this is what I'll say. Anybody who says, and I feel this way about skateboarding too,
Hmm.
right? Anybody who says I used to be punk never was.
Yeah, that makes sense.
You know what I mean?
Hmm.
You can say I was super into punk rock when I was a kid, but that's not saying you're not punk anymore.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean?
There's a difference between liking the music and then the
Yeah.
life being the lifestyle.
Right, right,
Which
right. And you can be a big shot in a suit and still be punk rock. You know what I mean? It's a whole thing. And I think that, like, in fact, some of the most punk rock people I know, technically I've ever met, wouldn't even classify themselves as punk rock. But it's because they do their thing and they own it. You know what I mean? I always kind of felt like punk rock was like the true spirit of rock and roll, because I think rock and roll forgets what it is a lot.
definitely.
You know what I mean? And I
Hmm.
think right now we're dealing with a really rough time because it's splintered itself and become so clicky
Yeah.
that it's eating itself alive.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? There's a lot of cool stuff out there, but like rock isn't dominating the airwaves, if you will, anymore. And there's
Right.
lots of bands out there doing really well, but like it's not what it was. And the ones that shine out, like, really shine out. Like when I see look at music these days, I think that there's always killer stuff out there. But when I look at bands that are still doing interesting things, or that do interesting things and that are kind of punk rock, whether they would admit it or not,
Hmm.
I think of people like Death from Above, 1979, Queens of the Stone Age, this band from Canada called Cleopatra, which is just like phenomenal. If
Hmm.
you haven't heard them, it's like two kids, and I think their first EP they were like 17 or something.
We
When you get
that's
off
punk
here,
rock.
yeah, yeah, yeah. When you yeah, now they're like 23 or something, right? So when you get off this, check out this song they have called Hometown, and realize that
Okay.
like two teenage kids wrote that and recorded it. You know what I mean? Um, but and but I think that there's rock and roll forgets itself, and that's why it is where it is now. Metal has 400 flavors, and if you're not uh, uh, an acolyte of that flavor, then you're not in any of the others. You know what I mean? Like every genre has become so clicky and snobby
Hmm.
and and gatekeepy that it's destroying itself. And rock and roll is like forgetting to just be rock and roll. To show up, give zero fucks, turn your amp up all the way, and play loud. And I think that that's after Anarchy Club ended, that sort of became my focus with music. And I did this thing called 27 Club,
Hmm.
and then that turned into Dead Star Cult. And in both of those, I was trying to get away from the Anarchy Club sound, with no diss to Anarchy Club, but trying to do something that was like wholly my own, and thinking of like, what is something I've always wanted to do musically that I've never done. And I
Hmm.
was in this band ages ago called C60 slash Cobalt 60, and people always compare to Anarchy Club to that. So my thing was, I want to do something that is heavy and not metal and sounds nothing like either of those bands. And I feel like I finally came to that through 27 Club, into Dead Star Cult, into what is now Type 66. So, um, which people will hopefully be hearing come September, October. But yeah. Hey, this is funny because we're going to end up doing like an hour and a half, aren't we?
I I mean, I got nothing going on.
I
We'll
was gonna
go.
say break it up into episodes because people won't be able to make it all the way through.
We're gonna take another break. When we come back, we're gonna talk more about Keith Smith, his music, and his current projects. We'll see you
Thanks.
then.